Ingrid Hu Dahl. Welcome to the Star Coach Show.
Hi, Meg. Nice to be here. Thank you so much.
I am so excited to spend time with you. We are going to be talking about some amazing things, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to be talking about um, how we advocate for underrepresented voices, which is one of the key things that when I saw Ingrid's bio, we know that lots of people want to come meet all of you on the Star Coach Show, but Ingrid's story just really captured me. We're going to be talking about how do we like coach for inclusion? What do we need to do when we think about that people are impacted by culture? Because Ingrid's got this, uh, you know, diverse background and the weight of cultural expectations and like all the things that as coaches, when we're really truly interested and connected with people, it's so important. So, we're going to get more, and I'm going to tell you more about this wonderful lady in just a second. But I want to welcome you. I want to welcome you and say we appreciate that you're here every week. Some incredible guest like Ingrid joins us to talk about their story, to help us be better leaders, to embrace our coaching journey. And that's what the Star Coach Show does. The strategies, tools, and resources is there for a reason. And I just ask you, wherever you're listening, take a minute to follow the show because you don't want to miss a minute of people like Ingrid. I'm sorry, you just don't. And so you can do yourself a favor by taking a second, subscribing to Star Coach Show on YouTube. So not only can you hear my guests, but you can see their fabulous faces and just kind of get that listening to that next level. So enough about that. Let's dive into this incredible interview. And let me tell you why Ingrid really popped for me. Because Ingrid, you did. You popped. I mean, like I opened it up and I was like, ooh, Ingrid Hu Dahl sounds really fabulous. And it was because, A, you're an author. How many of us feel like we have a book inside of us and we just haven't released it? Well, can we all take a minute to do a round of applause for Ingrid because her book was just released? Sun Shining on Morning Snow, which right there, oh, it's like a breath taker, was just released and it's your memoir, right? But it's about
It
leadership and
is.
it's about coaching and it's about inclusion and connection. And so we're going to lean into that today. But she's also a TEDx speaker. How many of us are like, yeah, I want to be a TEDx speaker? So you're talking to one right here. She is the founder of a coaching and consulting business, which is dedicated to empowering the next generation of leaders. So, here at the Star Coach Show, we do so much around coaching, but we also do so much around leadership. And Ingrid is this beautiful blend of that. She's certified by the ICF, International Coaching Federation, Center for Creative Leadership. Many of you, that name is also going to bubble up for you. And she brings these decades of experience in helping people be the best they can be. So, with that, Ingrid and I had this great exploratory call because we were like, we could talk for like
We
10 years.
did. Yeah, we
Yeah.
did. It was really fun, Meg. This is so cool.
So instead, we thought, well, maybe we'll zero it down a little, we'll bring it down just a little bit. And I think, like, let's start. You know what? I'm going to pivot just a little bit. Let's start with what did it take to have that book that was bubbling up inside of you make it to the written page, and in people's hands? What was that journey like for you, Ingrid?
Oh, I'd love to share because it involves another coach, and in this case, a writing coach. And I didn't know that writing coaches existed, even though I'm a leadership coach. And I was introduced to one, Stacey Ennis. She's based in Portugal. And I think very much like our journey as coaches and leaders, it's best to do so with a friend, with an accountability partner, with a peer, with a certified coach. All parts of the journey, you can welcome people in to guide you, kind of like a shaman. And she was that for me, for sure. I definitely had this story inside, but I was unraveling and untethering it to a lot of the like lived experiences where you're not even sure if somebody would read or be interested in the story. But it was what opened that possibility up for me and almost pushed me to write was losing my mother. So I lost my mom 3 years this month to cancer. And the journey was so wild and so, at the same time, so difficult and traumatizing, but also uplifting in these interesting ways where a lot of healing was happening, forgiveness, letting go, and love and connection, that it felt important for me to process my grief and to lay bare my story and to share it with the world. I think I had a new lens suddenly where it was like, this is one life you live, or at least the one life you remember, perhaps. And I want to be able to give something of myself, of my story to the world, especially in a time where I think our humanity really needs it the most.
Yeah.
So I didn't want to write a book that was just purely about leadership or coaching. I felt like showing the reader how you can actually make these choices to step into this truth. Every difficulty, every bullying experience, every cultural expectation, all these things are there where in some ways you can navigate who you are and what your purpose is, which really got me into becoming the person I am today, a leader and a coach.
And one of the things that you brought up in our exploratory call, which I hope is okay to bring up, is the challenges that you had because your mom passed during shutdown,
Hmm.
when the world was shut down. There was such a it just complicated the grief, right? Like,
Very much so.
oh my goodness. And I think that as coaches and as leaders, we need to understand that everyone has their life experience is unique to them. And one of the things that comes up for me, and I'd love your perspective on this, is as I instruct coaches, as I mentor coaches, sometimes when a personal story comes up or when a personal challenge for a client or another human being comes up, the tendency would be to like, or if we're not
Mm,
disciplined, if we're is like take it and like start to either share our own experience
hmm.
and sort of diminish the other, or say that it's going to be okay, or that it's like, and I'm just wondering, since you've walked that journey and then you also shared about it in your memoir, like what would you say to those people listening who are like, how should I be in a moment when
Mm.
somebody is in that place of their own their own experience? How do I hold space for their own experience?
Oh, it's such a great question. And I'll share two scenarios, one as a facilitator and one as a coach. And I'll start with the one as a coach. I find that when people are sharing something very personal or vulnerable, or they're having a memory of something that's reminding them of the topic or the barrier to their goal, I love allowing there to be a lot of space, not reacting, just listening and sitting there and just asking, what's coming up for you when you share this?
Mm.
What might be getting in the way? What might be a different way of examining that experience? And I realize that depending on what the story is, like it could be a fine line where you're kind of getting right to the edge of therapy. But I think when people are having that moment, just being a witness
Mhm.
is really key. So that would be my sort of coaching experience. And I find that just sitting there and even watching somebody process out loud, because some people really like, I'm like that, like processing out loud, they kind of figure out what they need from what they're sharing. And if they're not,
Mhm.
just those tiny, gentle, curious, exploratory questions, which we're good at, that's what our expertise is, helps uncover or unlock something that maybe they've been sharing that story before and didn't quite see. And the reason why they're bringing it up in this session is they trust you and they want to have a bit more of an evoked awareness around it. And so sharing your own or saying, "Oh, let's fix it," or "How do I help, change your mood around it," is not the ask. And I think you're absolutely right, Meg. I know you know that that's what's happening there. The second is facilitating. I actually was facilitating a few years ago in New York. It was a big group, and this gentleman who was this like super kind-hearted man, beautifully tattooed, is having this like amazing self-awareness moment. It's like an awakening moment in front of their peers, and they start to cry in the session. And this is really interesting. So what I did is I just held space and waited. I didn't go over to this gentleman. I didn't put my arm around them or hand or say anything. I just kind of held the space to allow the moment to calm and be felt and to see what could happen afterwards. And what's interesting is I knew that that was my instinct was to give that space and not to react or respond. But someone else in the audience later came up to me and were like, I was so surprised and like almost upset at you for not going and hugging that person right away and trying to nurture them for crying. I'm like, why do you think that's coming up for you?
Mm.
What is it about your interpretation of my role or what might maybe you believe you might have needed? Like it's just so fascinating. Like these are
Yes.
moments for us to have a slight mirror.
Yes.
And every time you project on the coach or a facilitator, insights can also happen for us around, oh, I would have really liked somebody to nurture me and hug me.
Right.
And that's why I'm projecting that onto this facilitator. Or my interpretations of gender roles is that, as a female, you should be nurturing this man. That's also fascinating and also culturally expected to tease that out.
So good. And the other thing that that person was doing, it was projecting onto the gentleman what he needed.
Yeah,
And that's a projection. I mean,
that's right.
we don't know, and you giving the space, that's just beautiful insight. Thank you for that, and thank you for bringing from two perspectives,
Sure, no
um,
problem.
because the audience here is we do all this, right, ladies and
Yeah.
gentlemen? We're facilitating and we're coaching and we're doing things. So what led you to being in this place of I want to be an advocate for underrepresented voices?
Mm. Yeah, for those of you watching, I'm holding up my book and listening. You might not be seeing me do that, but I think it's really important to advocate for underrepresented voices because there's so many represented voices that have been out there and documented um, in history. Think about how history is written, how certain things are erased, regardless of what country you're from or have affiliation with. There's an erasure. And I think that representing oneself, one's truth, one's story, and connecting and amplifying those who are not seen or always not heard. I think a really great example of this is super simple is when I work with a team and I notice that it's likely that this gentleman is not hearing his female colleagues. It's almost like he's tuned out a certain register of voice and only listens to a lower register, which often is coming from men, as like the voice that I pay
Mhm.
attention to. So when I notice certain dynamics like that, which happen in a lot of different cultures, which happens almost like an unflinching thing, like people are doing this because they're so used to it, such a ingrained habitual
Yes.
practice, right? I try to encourage people, every day you have an opportunity to challenge that habitual rut that we fall into that it gets kind of like a couch, like a little too cozy. It's a
Mm-hmm.
little too
Mm-hmm.
comfortable. Suddenly we went from like a really difficult situation or scenario where you're standing and paying attention to like lounging and sort of eating chips and not thinking about it. And I want to challenge people to look at that and say, gosh, is that what's happening for me? Am I tuning out and not listening to women purely based on how I've been taught or how I've observed that to happen? How might I tune more in to my female colleagues when they speak? And some ways I can practice that is every time a woman speaks in that register, I literally write down what she says and reflect back what I heard. So it's like retraining, but it's
Mm-hmm.
simple yet hard. And I bring that up
Yes.
because if you don't, listeners, watchers, have exposure to underrepresented voices and people in the room, or you're used to kind of feeling more comfortable with people who look the same as you're missing out an opportunity to really lean in and get curious and learn somebody else's experiences. Most of the times, when somebody who's underrepresented or is coming from a very different demographic than yours into that space, they can feel like the lonely only. It can feel like they are the only one who's like had access to this very limited access space. And you can imagine how different their existence is and their participation in that culture of the company, of that team, of belonging, what that's like. Whereas I think folks who are very used to it and it comes naturally, they don't even think about it. This is a moment to really think about it and to participate in ways that help make that space feel more adventurous, more um, expansive, and to challenge
Mm-hmm.
everybody's preconceived notions or slight habits. Again, we're human. We fall into these
Yes.
habits. And with coaching, we have this opportunity to actually get out of those behaviors, which is lovely. But underrepresented voices are really key and pushing through that discomfort. Like in coaching, we always talk about like we got to push through the discomfort into fear and then we grow. That's actually how we need to treat our dynamics with people who are different
Yes.
from us. But we forget that that's actually part of the same hurdle.
Oh, I just love that. And as you were speaking, one of the things that bubbled up for me was that we happen to be in a time, and I think across the globe, I certainly have the experience living in the United States, that when people are different than us, um, I think the knee-jerk reaction for many populations is to say, why can't they be like me? Or this is what my
Mm,
norm is, and therefore making other people wrong. Like if that's your lived experience, but it's not my lived experience, then you're wrong. And I just
mm,
have seen and heard a lot of that maybe escalating as of late. So I think that we as coaches have the opportunity using curiosity and using inquiry to explore what else could be true, and what might that person's lived experience be like, what um rather than falling in a place of judgment, what would happen
yeah,
if we fell into a place of curiosity? And I just think there's a lot of room for that, and think that we are in a place of potentially opening up the lens a little with our questions. What are your thoughts about that?
I love that. And I think it's a really important call to sort of challenge judgments because as humans, we have them every day. We just are walking around with them internally. And I would say it's the coach now has this responsibility when the client is like in a good place and ready to push and
Right.
challenge not just assumption, which is happening all the time, but also um, I was having this like moment where I was like, it's not just that it's assumption. It's also like, and it's not challenging somebody for saying like, oh, you're not connecting or being curious with somebody different than you. I think it's like, what is something that you might want to let go of? What is something that you're holding on to? Let's call it righteousness. Like, let's go back to
Yeah.
righteousness. I think the moment that coaches notice somebody getting on a platform and claiming they're right and somebody's wrong, or claiming, gosh, my boss is such a blank, I'm so mad, everything is about the boss, right? My projections of the boss, so my judgments of the boss, the positionality of that person, and I'm right, they're wrong. Those are major like alarm signals going off that we might need to be doing some cognitive behavior theory work. Like, let's
Yes.
chart this out and really get clear on the reaction, the emotion, what actually was the situation, and then what's your reaction to it, your behavior, and looking at how your belief, your perception and then your behavior are always correlated. So these are your levers.
Yes.
I think it's really important to slow down that righteousness. And I find that when you mix righteousness with discriminatory superiority, AKA, racism or racialized sexism, that gets extremely dangerous. And
Mm.
I mean that it's dangerous for the person who's fuming with those weavings of those things, and it's extremely harmful for the recipients, whether they're a person of color, a woman, or not, in the space. And that
Right.
energy can get really, really big, but it can also be diffused quickly. So I think the art of coaching and facilitating and creating leadership experiences is to help allow for some of that, but then very thoughtfully curate how to see that and then how to do something different. So it interrupts what becomes the tsunami of reactivity into a learning experience for everyone to bear witness to and support this person who's just like us. Everyone's like this, right? To say,
Mhm.
hey, the moment I'm feeling really righteous, will you support me and challenge me? Like, ideally, that's like the goal. You have peers who are like, Ingrid, are you all right? You seem like you're feeling heightened emotions around this one thing. Like, is that real? Like, do we know that that's true? I don't necessarily want somebody to listen to me vent. It feels good, but what I want somebody to be able to do is to gently see me, ask a question, and push.
Wow, that was really, really valuable. And thank you for sort of going there with me. I think, we wanted to talk about coaching for inclusion, and I think it's all of these elements kind of come into that. What else is coming up for you as important to bring to the sunlight around this concept of coaching for inclusion?
Oh man, I think it's just going back to the basics. Like, think people overcomplicate human connection, right? And inclusion can be daunting. Oh, immediately I think I'm not doing it right, or it's about me feeling shame, or I'm gonna shut down. I'm not gonna bring that up again. I said the wrong thing. Like, all those things are very human. Of course, we're gonna stumble. We're gonna say the wrong. I've said the wrong things for sure, and I've been like, "Oh my God, I can't believe I just said that to you. I'm so sorry." But
Can I have it? Yeah.
what
Can
should
I have a
I?
takeover? Yeah.
Yeah, and also like I do experience that, but is that real? Like, wait, is that coming from some other kind of racialized layering in my view? Like, do you mind if we sit here and like talk about it? Like, I think it's slowing down, not being fully consumed with shame, anger, resentment. Those emotions are not helpful, but let them go. Like, let them roll over and start with the basics. Like, and the basics, I mean, is like challenging ourselves to listen to understand. Like, I think our clients, we're all really good as people and level one listening. I just am listening to respond. All the mental chatter, how I want to be perceived. Ooh, this person, I have this judgment, whatever. And just helping our clients listen to understand and be curious to really know what the person that they're connecting with is saying and getting into level three, ideally, which is also not caring that there's like this big meeting coming up and like we need to rush this conversation. It's no, these are your colleagues. This is an experience that all of you participate in, hopefully, to have a thriving, robust culture of high performance that requires these moments that matter. And the moments that matter where this is the most important thing for us right now is to
Mhm.
connect in this way. And if I miss it, and if you miss it, a lot can go wrong from this moment if we don't connect in this way. And circling back, I've had moments where clients are like, oh, I had that conversation. I don't know if it went well, but oh, I just want to move on. And you're like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Sounds like you actually want to circle back. And if you do, what would you say your fear is and what would you say your hope is for that conversation? And they're honestly pretty quick at the draw of knowing what is my fear and what is my hope. I'm like, okay, the next conversation you have, start with that.
Mm.
Show up vulnerably and say what your fear is and say what your hope is and see what happens. And 9 times out of 10, if done truly with vulnerability, great outcomes and connection occur. So I think to be an inclusive leader, to lead with inclusion, is very much going down to the basics. And I'd say it's a little bit of unlearning and educating yourself. Like there's a lot of things I've learned and unlearned about history. We talked about that erasure. When I kind of go under the hood and get curious about, like, wow, I didn't realize that was happening at that time. And then what was going on between those two countries led to this experience. And then you had religion come in, which is actually from the European side. And oh, how fascinating that then. So you understand more so the dynamics, the historical references, and the cultural shifts that are happening, whether your clients are immediately impacted or not. That's part of what we're globally experiencing. And the last thing I think it's important to say is we have to recognize that we are operating in a social system of power and oppression, those who have privilege and those who do not. And then even within that, it gets replicated and like spat out based on skin tone, based on the proficiency of English, like into these tiny, tiny micro nuances that are very, very intensely felt. So in my book, when I talk about the scene where my leader, tech pioneer mom is re-recording her outgoing voicemail message to rid the otherness that her accent is revealing, exposing. Um, Not a lot of people per se are going through that who have great proficiency in English, who look potentially white or pass as white. So being curious about those experiences and how much energy is spent trying to fit in one particular box and letting go of all the beauty of what makes you different because otherness is exposing, and the exposure is not one of curiosity, it's one of judgment. And you are potentially on the outside and you're not in. Um, it's worth really doing some of the work to look into that because it is a very, very real, very old, and heavily matrixed experience. So, any listener who's like, I don't know what she's talking about, oh boy, let's get you set up for that rodeo. And there you go. Go right into the ring and experience what I'm talking about because, man, it's not sitting on a lawn chair and looking at the beauty of a meadow, which is lovely. It's getting to the rodeo and feeling, wow, this is a dangerous sport that's happening right now. And I need to contribute and participate into making this a very relaxed meadow for everybody, not just for the few.
Wow. Spot on.
Thanks,
And
Meg.
a couple of the things that you said, for anybody who's like, well, gosh, where do I even begin? A couple of the things that Ingrid said there that are so key is, how do you hold what history has taught us? How do you, how well versed are you, or even, aware of, so that you can sort of hold the space if somebody is confused or misguided or just because we certainly are, we're a partner in the relationship for a reason. If you have knowledge or information that can be helpful in a client's path, you might have information that they don't have. And also, what are you doing to create your own curiosity and your own exploration about other people's experiences? And um, you know, we certainly have our model of the world, and yet as coaches, it's really important that we understand and do what we can to learn and embrace and ask questions about other people's model of the world. So good. Ingrid, I would want to talk to you forever and ever and ever. Let's actually we had so many things that we wanted to talk about today, but I think we landed right where we were supposed to. And one
Agreed.
of the things that we talked about in our exploratory call that I really want to be sure that we include is this concept of reclaiming our personal power, the power that sometimes we might
Mm.
give away for free. Um, and I just think that it's probably kind of the frosting on what we've been talking about. So what would you like to share about the concept of reclaiming personal power?
I can share from my own personal experience, and definitely once I saw it and let it go, I saw how so many people are in the same kind of some people have likened it in the past to like a hamster wheel, but it's almost like, I think about being in tech, for example. I sometimes liken it to being like the new factory. It can feel like you're spending every waking hour working for a factory. And what I think is interesting is in my experience, you get what tends to happen is you get so wedded, so immersed, so fused with like your title and your role and the company that you work at, that you can start just kind of slowly chip away at your own power and give it freely to the company. And I've mentioned this before that it's not always that the company's asking for it, but they'll take it. They're happy to take it, but they're
Yeah,
not
they're
saying,
not going to say, no, no,
slice your
no,
soul
protect
away.
yourself and your
Yeah,
well-being. Yes.
we'll take it all. Whatever you want to give, we'll take it. It's a company, it's a corporation in this setting that I'm sharing. And then you notice that you're kind of not even allowing yourself to have an experience in the day where you walk in nature or connect with loved ones or pet your dog and take them for a walk. Like suddenly the world gets very, very focused and small on your computer or going into the office and like engaging very intensely, and you lose taking care of yourself. It's all becomes part of my identity is this job, my identity is this role, I'm important, people value me. And the interesting thing that's happening, much like losing my mom, where there's this big moment of loss, a lot of people are experiencing the ripping of that identity when these layoffs happen. And they're happening and they're continuing to happen. And it's a very scary time for a lot of people. What I recommend is doing the work, and I really do think for clients, the coach helps a lot in this, but helping clients see that what is it about who they are and their identity that they want to choose for themselves, that they want to nurture for themselves, the journey that they want to have that's completely separated from their job and that identity. It is not healthy what's happening. And there's nothing wrong with being proud or being like, oh my God, I'm so excited I have this job and this role. Like, yeah, people work really hard for those jobs, like, no doubt. Or being getting promoted, like, of course, like, we're celebrating people. But for me and a lot of the colleagues I've seen is when you completely immerse yourself where your identity is that, and for the most part, only that, things suffer. And you have to choose in that point. This is not just me. I'm a multifaceted person. And sometimes that means like, oh, I'm going to pick my partner, my mental health, this vacation, a break, going to spend time with a loved one, even if it means, depending on the company you work for, that I'm an underperformer. Okay, so I know I perform really well, but in the system, in comparison to others who might be chipping away and giving their soul for free, if I'm considered a low performer, so be it. And holding those boundaries, because your job is not necessarily the thing that tells you that you're valuable. It's you who decides that you're valuable no matter what. One of the things I loved with my coach is I wake up on some days, if I remember this, but I love it because it really helps. It's not a mantra, but I wake up because I'm somebody who, for a long time, I was driven by performance and then having all the things that I did basically say, I'm valued, I'm valuable, right? I think a lot of people can relate to that. But with a coach, what I did is I started waking up literally like, okay, I'm slowly waking up. And then I say, okay, my tank of value is at 100% already in just waking up. Everything else is extra. And the pressure valve that I think I was putting on myself to have to prove every day that I was valued really kind of let off the gas. And it was so much more enjoyable in the day when something would happen where I'd be like, oh, that was really fantastic, and it's extra. I don't have the pressure to have to prove anything because I already woke up fully valued. Like those little mental shifts, I think, can be really important.
So many gold nuggets in today's interview. Am so appreciative of that. And as we're winding down our time today, if people were just walking away thinking about one thing, if you, I'm going to really get, but what's the thing you want to be sure that we're offering, if they so choose to sort of pick up and take it with?
I'd say you have one life to live, so choose the truth, choose your truth, and live it fully.
Love that. If you would all like to know more about Ingrid, and who wouldn't? First of all, her book, Sun Shining on Morning Snow, is available now. It's available wherever you get your books. So certainly look for that. We also have links to connect with Ingrid in the show notes for this. Ingrid, if there was like one best way for them to connect with you, what would you shout out about?
Oh, I would go to the book website, sunshiningonmorningsnow.com.
Excellent. Um, and And I'm just so appreciative of you did a beautiful mix in today's interview of personal and professional and challenging and supporting our audience. I think you just did a beautiful job of that.
Thank
So
you.
ladies and gentlemen, if you like what Ingrid shared, and I know you did, feel free to grab, if you're watching us on YouTube, grab all the links right below this video. If you're listening and all the places that the Star Coach Show plays, grab it in the show notes at starcoachshow.com. Each week, like I said at the onset, we're going to bring you a new episode, something to challenge you to step into your greatness, because we're all here on this earth together for a reason. We are far more connected than we are divided, even if it doesn't feel that way. What can you do to reach out, to connect, so that we can all do the heavy lifting together? So be kind to yourself, be kind to others. And until next week, this is Meg Rentschler wishing you the very best. And once again, a huge thank you to Ingrid for joining us.
Thanks, Meg.